Hi, I'm Rob, and I'm going to be giving you an overview of how to make your own maple syrup at home. So this video will probably take about, I want to say 15 to 20 minutes, but within the first probably couple minutes, you'll probably know if this is for you or not. And then if you're really interested, yeah, just keep following along. So if we could get started here, let's see. So the basics. It's not complicated, but it is time consuming. Basically, you will tap your trees, collect sap, filter it, boil it. If you have sugar maples, that will give you a 40-to-1 ratio. So every 40 liters of maple sap, maple water, will give you 1 liter of syrup. And for silver maples and Norway maples, that's about a 50 to 1 ratio. Then you finish it off by getting it to a certain temperature that makes it syrup. Then you do hot packing or canning, and then you get to consume it and enjoy it. Next up, what you'll need. So, obviously, you need some maple trees. You want them to be about 30 centimeters in diameter at least. That will be for one tap. We'll get to that later, though. You need food safe collectors, so things like old vinegar jugs, or maybe a big thing that I got a whole bunch of popcorn in, for example. Um, if you have really large trees, you might want to upgrade to a large bucket, a food grade bucket. You could probably even just get the orange ones from Home Depot. The PET that they're made of are food grade. These ones are transparent and have nice lines up them, so it's nice to have. Um, Personally, for myself, I got some lids for them because these things pop out, and then it allows you to pour directly from the giant pail, right? Ask your friends, ask your family. You don't necessarily have to buy anything. I am all for reusing stuff. Yeah, just see what you could get. Maybe people who have water, big water jugs for like water coolers and stuff. If anybody's getting rid of those, if not, you could always get those at maybe Canadian Tire or Costco for I think they sell them for about $4 or $5 for the big ones, so that's a pretty good price. All right, next up, you need a maple syrup kit, so that'll have spigots or tubes, just depending on the style that you want. So if you have a spigot that has a tube attached to it, that tube will have to get right into a bucket. If you have a type of spigot or a spile that has sort of a little hook on it, you could kind of have the old style, um, pails with the sort of the metal handle over that you could hang on them, and those exist as well. You will need a drill with an appropriately sized drill bit. So here I have my spigot, and here I have, I believe this was a 1/4 inch drill bit. I have a bunch of other drill bits, of course. But yeah, so just make sure that the spigot, the drill bit that you have, is the proper size. Um, you will need let's see, a rubber mallet or a hammer. And if you don't have a rubber mallet, a rubber eraser and a hammer will do the trick for that. Let's see, you might need to, this is very important actually, you definitely need kitchen ventilation that vents outside of your house. If not, there are some do-it-yourself solutions. I'll show you what I did during my first year doing this, which was last year. But the reason for that is that you're boiling dozens and dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of liters of water, and you can't just have that going into your house because it will make the air super humid, and that is really dangerous to create mold in your house. And you definitely don't want that, so you want that humidity venting outside. Filters, so you will need, you don't necessarily need it, but I highly recommend a mesh filter, not just this type that has like little holes in it, but like really a mesh. And either cheesecloth, which I reuse personally, or some coffee filters. Uh, Obviously, a pot to boil the syrup in. With that, you'll need a candy thermometer, and these go to very high temperatures. This one goes up to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, but you need it to go to at least 220 minimum. You'll need some mason jars, of course, or something to put the syrup in for it to last a long time. What else have I missed here? You might need a ratchet tie or a rope to go around the tree so that you could hang certain things off of, for example. So myself, I have a ratchet tie going around the tree, and then I hang these on the ratchet tie, and then I will hang the jug on here like so, and with the tube going into the jug. Um, Hot water, bleach, dish soap. This is to pre-clean things that protect the trees. And I already mentioned the mason jar with the lids. So next up, this here we could see. This was my original setup. I have two very large silver maples. Two, not three. Well, I have three, but only two of them are in the backyard. So yeah, so I have three taps in there, and then I have the tubes. And as you can see here, actually, I had the ratchet tie going around the jugs, but that wasn't really working out because once they were all full, trying to get three jugs down while undoing a ratchet tie and the rope falls, like let's just say a lot of wasted sap was happened as a result of that. So, which is why I got these little S things. And if you don't want to buy anything, so I got these at Dollarama, but you could always maybe reuse an old coat hanger or something, just kind of shape it, or some old copper wire that you just might have from a previous, renovation project or whatever. That you might be able to do a makeshift thing, right? And yes, of course, the jug, which I upgraded to because all three of these were overflowing when I would check after the night or after getting home from work, and just upgrading to the giant pail. Um, um, yeah, prevented me from wasting too much sap. All right, so what's next? When to tap the trees. So you definitely want temperatures to be consistently going below zero at night and above zero in the day. So like, maybe a -5, 0 in the evening, and then maybe a plus, you know, 5 degrees in the day kind of thing, right? Obviously, check your forecast and see if at least for the next week it's about that. You definitely don't want it to be going too far below zero because there is a risk that once the holes are in the trees, that you get little cracks around them just from that sort of freeze-thaw cycle. It is a little bit trial and error, and nobody could accurately predict the weather. But last year we had a very mild winter, and I got back from vacation in February, and I was thinking, oh, maybe I should tap my trees. And I contacted an old friend who her family has a maple syrup farm in Woodstock, and she told me that they actually tap their trees super early, like in January. And so, yeah, I got right on to that and tapped the trees and had a pretty decent season. All right, so next up, we want to clean our gear. So you want to clean anything that will touch the sap in warm, soapy water. So your taps, tubes, drill bit, your buckets and jugs. But as for the bleach part, I would definitely recommend the drill bit and the spigots that get tapped into the trees. You'll want to clean those in a 1 part bleach, 20 parts water solution for about 5 minutes, and then give those a triple rinse just to make sure that you get all the bleach off. Okay, and then tapping the trees. So first, determine the diameter of your tree. Uh, if you have a tree that's 30 to 50 centimeters in diameter, one tap. If you have a tree that's 50 to 65 centimeters in diameter, two taps. And then over 65 centimeters in diameter, you could have three taps, sometimes even four taps. But that is, up to you, and kind of depends on the size of your tree, the direction that it faces, because you do want to have your taps being south facing. And the reason for this is that the south is where the sun exposure is. And so when a tree is south facing, you have the sun from the east setting in the west, just like a garden, all that sun exposure. And there's a freeze thaw cycle, and basically, the freeze-thaw cycle sort of creates like a pressure in the tree that kind of gets the sap flowing. And so you want to place the spigots as much as you can above a root or below a branch because that's where you get most of the sap flow. And you want it to be about 3 feet high. This is not a hard rule. It could be, 2 to 4 feet high. You want it convenient enough to be accessible, and you want your spigots to be able to drain into a bucket or whatever, what have you. I actually had to put a little bench with my pail uh, on it, with the bucket on it. So But you know, it's a little bit trial and error, a little bit of DIY makeshift solutions here. And how to tap the tree. So first of all, you're going to want to drill a hole in accordance with the directions that you get with your little spigots. So mine's set to drill about an inch. Let's see, where could we see that? So about an inch deep. So that's about 2.5 to 3 centimeters is what I did. And with the drill bit, what I did just to make sure, I put a little piece of tape around. You could also maybe just a little make a little mark with a Sharpie, and that'll, you know, show you exactly how far in you've gone. Um, so, pardon me. Oh, and you want to do that upward, depending on the type that you have. Mine, for example, just has an opening at this end. Some of them might have a little bit of a indentation, sort of at the top or bottom. But mine said at a 15-degree angle up approximately, and that just kind of promotes flow. So as the sap is coming down, it'll more easily flow out than if it were at a 90-degree angle. All right. So you're going to gently tap it in place, like I mentioned before. I don't have a rubber mallet, but I grab my eraser here and just gently tapped on the eraser, or you can maybe place it this way. Just it gives it a little bit of a cushion, right? So it's a little bit of a softer tapping, so you're not going to crack anything. And then if you have tubes, I was having a really hard time out in the cold of winter getting these to push up because these have a little bit of a edge to them to keep the tubes in place, right? So what I did, I soaked my tube, just the few inches of it, in nice hot water, and that really softened it up very nicely. It slipped up onto the spigot, no problem, and that was good to go. Okay, let's see what's next here. And then you're going to attach your jugs or buckets to the tree. As I mentioned, with the little S-shaped thing, I was able to hook on my old vinegar jugs and juice jugs or whatnot. And you definitely want to make sure that if you are having jugs hooked up, that they have a handle. That is super handy for that setup. And then yeah, check back in the evening or the next morning and see what sap you get. Filtering and boiling maple sap, aka maple water. So filtering. So if you are using a mesh strainer, um, what I did, I took some cheesecloth. I did probably about 3, 4 layers of it, and then I poured the maple water in there, and that gets out any, like little bits of tree, leaves, bark, whatever might be in there. Later on in the season, once it starts to get warmer, I was having little ants that were very thirsty for that delicious sweet maple water. And not to worry though, all of this gets boiled, and then I would just, uh, let the ants back outside, shake off the cheesecloth, or use the mesh strainer probably first actually, and just kind of give it a little tap, and back they'd go outside. Um, so let's see. So we do that, and then if you have too much, you do want to be able to store it in a place until you're ready to boil it. So you could put it in the fridge, you could freeze it in the freezer, and then have it thaw back out before boiling it. But you definitely want it to be, say, above 3 degrees, sorry, below or around, my mistake, 3 degrees Celsius, which is approximately what most people keep their fridges at, 40 Fahrenheit, 3-ish degrees Celsius. Um, so yes, and now to boil it and doing the venting and whatnot. So some people will boil outside. That is the classic Cabanas, maple, syrup farmer kind of way. Often they'll use wood. Nowadays they probably use natural gas of some sort, just like a gas stove. I choose to do mine inside with in off-peak hours with an electric stove. Um, if you have a convection stove, that's um, very good too. But if you're doing it inside, you definitely have to make sure that you have that venting, as I mentioned earlier. There are some outdoor solutions that you could do, like, you might have an electric, like, what do you call those little portable uh, stovetop thing. I can't think of the word, but you know what I mean, right? You just plug that into the wall and maybe outside with an extension cord. So that's an option if you want to boil outside. And you're going to be boiling a lot of water, as I mentioned, and it creates a lot of humidity. You definitely don't want to boil too vigorously, too quickly, because all that steam that's getting released will, and I'm not saying it might, it will make your walls in your kitchen sticky because there is sugar that's going with that. So you want to kind of do it low and slow. You know, you don't want to have your stove all the way at max. You once you get it up to a boil, put it down to medium. You know, sort of just a low and slow boil, right? So that it's constantly evaporating, but that you're not gonna damage your walls, damage your home. I run a dehumidifier in the kitchen while I'm doing this, along with the fan that's sucking the air out. And as it's boiling down in that pot, keep adding more maple water. And eventually, you'll see that there will be a color change in it. It's going to start to go from a very clear water to more of a sort of a brownish amber sort of color, right? And do not leave your stove on overnight. I have to emphasize this. That is not a good thing to do. I know some people that their stove, even if you turn it on low, something in the knob is a little bit broken, or you know, it wears out over time, and then it goes to max, and you know, it's a fire risk, right? So don't leave your stove on overnight. I can't emphasize that enough. Um, what I do at night, once I've done for a couple hours and off peak, before going to bed, I'll transfer it all to a slow cooker, and I'll leave the slow cooker running with the lid off. And sometimes on my stove, what I'll do with the pot, I will kind of have like a soup spoon, like a ladle, sitting over the pot like this. I will have this in here like that, and then this I have open like this, just to direct that steam up towards the where the fan is, right? Um, this because if it were just kind of like, you know, like this, you'll have a little bit coming out of this side, a little bit of coming out of this side, and some of this might get into the home. So just a couple little tips for um, you know, mitigating where that humidity might go. This here is a makeshift solution because, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I did not have the air venting out of the house, or rather, I had it venting out of the house, but I had to come up with a way to do it because the fan above my stove, my range, just recirculates the air into the house, which I think is completely pointless. I don't understand why anybody would ever do that, but that is the case. So what I have here, this is basically a bag that I taped onto the fan's exhaust port, basically. And then this is a dryer tube that I have some tuck tape here. There's a good, very sticky stuff. And this made basically a perfect seal, guys. And I just took a piece of cardboard that fit the window, made a little hole in it, and that's how I vented it out. And I tell you, it worked. This solution cost me maybe $8. That being said, I have since upgraded to a microwave and knocked a hole through the brick. That was a big job, very hard to do. But it's something I was eventually going to have done at my home anyway to get that air venting out. And my old microwave that was on the countertop, it got a new home. So no harm, no foul. Everybody's happy. And yeah, so, you know, be creative, right? Next up, we are finishing off the maple syrup. So we will need a candy thermometer, as I mentioned. Um, these might go under different names, but that's how I know them to be, right? So refrigerate a few days worth of boiled and condensed down maple syrup until it starts to turn, sorry, it's not syrup yet, it's maple water and sap. So we want to have it brown, but it's still pretty liquidy until you have pretty much a full pot's worth of that, you know, nice brown stuff. And if you taste this, it's going to be delicious. Also, I should mention, with maple water coming directly out of the tree, absolutely delicious. If you just boil it on the stovetop, don't put it in the kettle, it's going to make a sticky mess. Boil it on the stovetop, You could make delicious tea and coffee with a little bit of a maple flavor in it. Delicious in oatmeal if you know you're just putting a little bit of that stuff. Um, it's very healthy too, high in different vitamins and whatnot. Okay, back to finishing. So you are going to bring your maple almost syrup to a boil, and then put the candy thermometer in. As it's boiling, you'll see that the temperature should be about 212 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 100 degrees Celsius, which is the boiling point. Once it starts getting closer to 215, I like to keep a close eye on it. And it might take a while because when it's boiling, it's going to just stay at 212 until it starts thickening, and that could take a while. But once it hits 215, keep a close eye on it because uh, you will want to immediately remove the pot once it is, sorry, remove the pot from the burner once it reaches 218 to 219 Fahrenheit, because at that point it is syrup. And I should say that um, if you overboil it and it goes to 221 or something like that, no problem. Just add some water back in there and just have it get back to the 218. And once it gets to 218, congrats, you have made maple syrup uh, on your own at home. So, like I said, it's not complicated necessarily. It's very time consuming. And then, but once it's settled, you'll notice that you will have sediment at the bottom of the syrup. And do not worry about this. This is called maple sand, and it's perfectly consumable. I like to put it in oatmeal. If you have any recipes that require maple syrup, like cookies or stuff like that, you could put that right in there. Or you could actually just shake up your syrup and with the maple sand in it and pour that over pancakes. It's perfectly good. It's a little bit of a sediment, but it's perfectly natural, perfectly fine to consume. It's just not filtered, but you can filter it if you choose. Okay, so packing. All right, so hot packing or canning, or sorry, or your canning method of choice. I did hot packing. That's how I'm going to describe my thing. So here we got our mason jar and our lid. You're going to want to clean your mason jars, warm soap and water. I mean, if you want to go nuts with bleach, like go ahead. Uh, I don't, but do whatever you want. I'm not the boss of you. Uh, but after it's clean, I place the jars in the oven, and then I turn my oven up to, sorry, was it 250? No. Yes, sorry, I turned my oven up to 250 degrees Fahrenheit. So this will get them a little bit above that temperature that the syrup was at, basically. Because as everybody knows, you do not want to take a jar that is room temperature or say in the freezer or whatever, and then pour boiling hot stuff in it. It'll crack your jars. It could explode. Uh, just don't go from temperature extremes, right? So I put the jars in the oven. I put up to 250. This gradually brings them up to temperature. Okay. And what I actually do, you could use oven mitts. I had tongs, and I just kind of had the tong like this, put it in the oven, and that did a good job. So be careful to not add boiling syrup to jars that have not been preheated. I cannot emphasize that enough. Okay, so after about well, sorry, I shouldn't say after 10 minutes. Once your oven has reached 250 degrees, it might be 10 minutes. Just wait to see. Give it a few extra minutes maybe, just so it maintains that temperature for jars. But yeah, so they'll be approximately the same temperature as your syrup. Carefully remove the jars with oven mitts or with tongs, and then you're going to boil that syrup that was just boiled into these jars very carefully without spilling. And you want to get it up to almost right up to the edge, okay? And then you're going to take your probably new mason jar lids. You definitely want them to be very clean on this side. This one is not. It's quite filthy. I need to clean that or replace it if I'm going to do this again. Place it on there. Then we're going to tighten it nice and snug. Not too tight, not crazy, just nice and snug. And then what you're going to do, you're going to flip it upside down, put that on a towel or placemat or something, because this will heat up. And after that, you're just going to let them sit overnight. And the reason that we do this is because as heat expands stuff, coolness contracts. So as it contracts, that is actually going to make a suction and suck the lid up and make sort of a concave, you know, angle, right? Which is what you want to do when canning. And the next morning, you'll wake up and you'll see that it's not snug anymore. That means it worked because it actually sucked it in, right? And it's going to be a little bit loose, and then you just tighten it a little bit more, right? That's all you got to do. All right, so that's the amount of syrup. You can see I also have some on the sides here. This one I couldn't get quite up. This one either. This was the first one I did. That's the second one I did. So I consumed those first because I didn't get that maple syrup all the way right up to the top to be pretty much airtight. As you can see here, there's the maple sand at the bottom. That's a little bit of sediment, like I said, which is perfectly fine to eat, perfectly natural. These ones look darker, but I think it's just the type of jar. It wasn't reflecting the light the same way as these other ones that had sort of the more decorative, canning stuff on them. And this was all from two trees. Two trees gave me all this maple syrup. Let's see, it's August now, almost, and I've not even used half of it. So I've given a few away as gifts, anniversary gifts, um, to people, and yeah. But I guess I'll see you next year if I could get the same outcome. Right. So ending your season. All right. So signs that it's time to end your maple syrup season. So when temperatures start being above 0 degrees consistently night and day. So even if it's only like 2 degrees above zero, that's the start. When maple sap or water starts being cloudy, that's usually when it's higher up. And when you see buds forming on the trees, as you see in the background picture here, that is a sign that all of that is changing, right? So that means the tree is active again, and you're definitely going to want to turn off the taps pretty soon, right? Maybe a couple days after, it's not a big deal, but keep an eye on it, right? And you'll also, if you just taste the sap, it starts tasting a little bit sort of bitter, not woody, but maybe a bit of a metallic kind of flavor. Um, but yeah. And a few notes on cloudy sap. So it's still fine to boil it, but sap begins being cloudy due to natural bacteria that starts feeding on the sugar. And bacteria, it is natural. It's in yogurt and all kinds of different things. But basically, the bacteria is feeding on the sugar, um, and that means that it will need to be boiled down even more. So let's say you have a silver maple that's a 50-to-1 ratio. It might be a 55 or maybe even a 60-to-1 ratio at this point, just because the bacteria has eaten the sugar. But as you boil it, the bacteria gets killed off, and that's all fine. But that is how they make that darker maple syrup. It's not that sort of that pure maple syrup. It's a darker maple syrup. It has a deeper maple flavor. It's still sweet because you've boiled it down to be sweet, but it has a more of a woody maple flavor, right? So and that stuff is perfectly edible as well. But that is syrup that's made later in the season. And then untopping your trees, so you're just gonna want to carefully, give a little twist and tug, and you might have to jiggle a little bit, you might have to work at it a little bit, but you want to twist and tug it out, and then the trees should heal naturally on their own throughout the season. Yeah. So next up, here are some links. I will share this document with everybody, and just a few things to follow along. So some instructions, two different ones. This one here is from Home Hardware, and we could go through these real quick. Home Hardware has a very good little instruction manual for how to make your maple syrup. I based a lot of my stuff off of that the first year. Next up, we have tapmytrees.com, and this is a wealth of knowledge on this website. All kinds of great information here. Whoop, did not mean to do that. Spigots and tubes. So I got my kit off Amazon. I have a lot of reasons that I don't like Amazon personally, but I, I couldn't find what I wanted anywhere local, and so that's where I got it from. Unfortunately, that is how it works sometimes. Spouts, these are the ones from Home Hardware that have the hooks, and just depends what kind of pails or buckets you have. I suppose you could probably hook one of these S things up with a tube from one of those. Well, no, you can't hook up tubes on those ones actually. That would have to be directly falling into the thing. So anyway, yeah, you could figure out your own solutions. Food safe buckets. This is the one that I told you I got at Home Depot. You could also use the orange ones as I mentioned. But yeah, and then the lids are a different fee. Uh, Boiling. So this is instructions, more in-depth instructions on boiling and sort of a cost breakdown. Someone who tried a few different methods and whatnot might just interest you. If you want that dryer vent method for that do-it-yourself thing, that was from Home Depot. And you know, if I'm not saying that you have to go out and buy these, if you could reuse them, that is obviously the best option possible. Yeah, you definitely have plenty of options for how to collect your maple syrup. There's another one. And with that, I will say happy maple syrup production. Good luck, and yeah, hope it goes well.